Opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody, coming to you cordless from glamorous Minneapolis. I had to look at the date. It's Monday night, July 13th, 2026. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is show number 368, if you're keeping score at home. Economist Murray Sabrin was the very first guest on our very first show on July 31st, 2023. And going back to Conch News, he's probably been on this show and incarnations of it at least a dozen times, more than any other guest. And he's back today. He's joining us from Fort Myers.
No, we're now in Naples, Jim.
Naples. I always get that confused. Sorry, Murray. My apologies. Yeah, right. Naples, Florida, where it's like 90 degrees here, and it's like 90 degrees in Minneapolis too. How's things going, Murray?
Things are going great, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about really important issues. I've been doing my thing 3 months now into my new podcast, Health, Wealth, and the Pursuit of Happiness, working on the website, MafiUSA.com. You can see the Mafi hats here in black and green.
That's MAFI.com, right?
Make Americans Financially Independent. It really should be Mafia, Make Americans Financially Independent again, because we were independent before the Great Depression. The American people were relying on themselves, on their families, on each other, their community. And we didn't have this gigantic welfare state that is really undermining prosperity, because the only way you can keep the welfare state going, Jim, is for the government to spend more and for the Federal Reserve to print more money. And that's going to eventually end in a major financial crisis. So we get into the details of this. But I've been writing about this for 50 years now, and since the 70s, when I saw this thing unfolding. Then when my first book came out in 1995, Tax-Free 2000, The Rebirth of American Liberty, I provided a roadmap, if you will, for the policymakers to start devolving from the welfare state to the vision of the founders. And we just celebrated the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And I'm taking the position, Jim, did the founders really sign that document where they pledged their lives, fortune, and sacred honor to create this welfare warfare state that we have today, where we're spending over $7 trillion a year? The deficit is almost $2 trillion a year, nearly $40 trillion in debt. There's no business or family or individual that could keep on spending more money than they earn every year and not have any consequences. It would be impossible. But the government can do it because they have the ability to float the debt, and even that is a bad thing, because eventually people will stop buying our debt, and then when that happens, the central bank usually steps in and buys the debt. That's called monetizing the debt, and then you're off to the races with inflation. So no matter how you slice it, both the Republicans and Democrats have put us between the rock and the hard place. And therefore, we're going to see, I think, the mother of all financial crisis down the road. And I think it could happen as early as 2029, based upon my study of financial cycles and economic cycles in U.S. history. But it certainly is going to happen in the 2030s if it doesn't happen by 2029, because we're on an unsustainable path. But I think most people agree on, because
Absolutely.
The other thing that's happening in the early 30s is that Social Security and Medicare trust funds are going to be at zero when they had tons of money, but because more money is going out than coming in terms of taxes, the fund is going to run dry, and therefore
2032, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, that. And this was predicted decades ago when people said,
it's simple math, Murray. It's like, you know, You don't have to be any big prognosticator to figure it out. You just do the math, and it's like, and that's the date.
Well, the thing is, Social Security was bailed out twice under the Carter administration, then under the Reagan administration, and they said it was the last bailout in '83 said this is Social Security is going to be good for the next 75 years. Well, here it is, 40 years later, and the well is going to be dry soon. So again, this is another example of fiscal irresponsibility and a culture that says we are the government and we are really standing by to help you, when it should be we are for the government and we really know how to screw you.
Yeah. Now, if I'm right, the interest on the accumulated debt, the $40 trillion per year, is now over 100% of what is it, the GDP, or what is it? It's not.
No, the interest on the debt is just over $1 trillion a year.
Right.
That is mind-boggling.
Yes, it is.
Think about this. When Reagan was elected in '80, the national debt, the total national debt, was just under $1 trillion. Now we're spending more than that on just the interest on the debt.
Right.
I mean, the national debt is up 40 times since Reagan was elected. No one can say that the economy is 40 times better than 1981 when Reagan took office. So again, here we go again, as Reagan would say, that the government is promising things that it can't deliver in the long term. What delivers in the long term is the free market, the free enterprise system, because that's why the economy is as good as it is on a relative basis, because the gasoline is available, the stores are fully stocked, you can order things online and get them the next day. Everything we want can be purchased as long as you have the resources, the money to pay for it. Some things have gotten very expensive, as we all know.
Yeah, but some things have gotten very cheap too. I mean, it's
absolutely. I mean, there was a great chart I showed on my last podcast that I did solo. I did a special podcast last week, and I showed a chart which has made the rounds on the internet recently, and it shows since 2000, all the sectors of the economy that have gone up the most in price in the last 26 years is where the government has the most influence in terms of spending and regulation. And the areas of the economy where we basically have a free market, those prices have gone down in real terms. It's just amazing. It is, Jim. It's, if one picture is worth 1,000 words, this picture should bury once and for all the notion that government intervention and government spending creates prosperity. It just does the opposite. It reduces our living standards. And our living standards would be so much higher if we weren't spending $1 trillion on the military, which is not the Defense Department. It's really what the War Department is now. They've changed the name to the War Department. That's exactly what it is. It's giving us these undeclared wars, which is, again, another example of how the people in Washington, presidents and the Congress, are not following the Constitution, because only the Congress has the right to declare war under our Constitution. President can't go to war on his own, and that's what we're seeing now. I mean, the situation in Iran is so bad that it could lead to a major war, namely World War III. In fact, some people have argued that World War III has already started. But in Ukraine, with Russia against Ukraine, we're supporting Ukraine, so are the European nations. So effectively, you have a proxy World War III where the Western nations are supporting Ukraine against Russia. And if things get out of hand there, who knows where this leads to, plus our bombing of Iran with Israel, that could lead to an expansion of the war. And now that the so-called ceasefire is over, we're going to see more bombs flying in the Mideast.
But Murray, you don't buy the premise that if Iran had a nuclear device, that they would use it and kill millions of people?
I mean, that's absurd. First of all, they're on record saying we don't want a nuke. They have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which says we are not going to develop a nuclear weapon. And Israel has, I don't know how many nuclear weapons, estimates are from 80 to 200 or 400. They have not signed a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. So they introduced nuclear weapons into the Middle East, and they don't even acknowledge it, for goodness sakes. It's the worst kept secret in the world. And so by having the United States get involved in the Mideast, bombing a nation that was no threat to us. In fact, Trump says they have no Navy, no Air Force. So if they have no Navy and Air Force, how can they attack us? How can they deliver a nuclear weapon? Even if they had one nuclear weapon, why would they use it if they can get obliterated by either the United States or the European nations that have nuclear weapons with NATO?
Well, I have to hold on. I have to play devil's advocate. I have to answer that. They would use it because they don't care. They're martyrs.
I don't think so. I mean, people also have basically the concept of self-preservation. I mean, if you really believe that, then why aren't they all over the world creating havoc? I mean, Israel has committed what people consider a genocide in Gaza, and the world has been basically relatively silent. Why aren't there sanctions on Israel for what they've done in Gaza? I mean, 50,000 people have died in Gaza because of what happened on October 7th of 23, when Hamas came into Israel. And some people call that a false flag. In fact, there was a report in the Wall Street Journal that the several young female IDF members warned the Israeli military that there's going to be an attack. And I find it hard to believe there weren't Mossad agents in Gaza knowing exactly what Hamas was doing. They have agents throughout the Mideast, Mossad. So they know exactly what's going on in Iran, in Syria, and all the other Arab nations.
That's obvious. They know exactly what's going on. We killed their frontline leadership in that one strike because Mossad knew where they were. I mean, that was...
Well, how absurd is that? Who are you going to negotiate with if the leadership is killed?
That is a problem, isn't it?
And the rules of engagement, from what I understand it under international law, is you don't kill the leaders of a nation, because then how will you negotiate any sort of peace agreement with that nation? There's a vacuum there. And so what you do is you get hardliners to say, we don't want to negotiate at all. And then the things start escalating. And so, again, what Trump has fallen into is the big rabbit hole that the Israeli government wanted the United States to get involved in, because there's no way that Israel could go after Iran and be successful, because Iran has a lot of drones and a lot of missiles. And I don't think they've used what they claim to have is hypersonic missiles that could probably reach any place in the Mideast very easily and be relatively undetected. And that would cause havoc on Israel, which we all know is a very small nation geographically. So again, they're playing with fire in the Mideast.
Well, hold on. We have to point out too, you brought up a really good point here. The other thing is that Iran is actually a very large country. There's over 90 million people there. I mean, it's way larger than like Canada or Mexico, you know? So there's that also, you know?
This is, I don't think there's any strategic thinking in Washington. This has been sort of the example of the tail wagging the dog, the tail being Israel, the dog being the United States. And Marco Rubio said, the Secretary of State, that we had to go in because Israeli government told the United States that we're going to attack Iran. Well, if you're going to attack Iran, good luck and see how that turns out. But for the United States to get involved because the Israeli government said they're going to attack Iran was the height of stupidity. It really was, because why are we attacking a nation that is not attacking us? I mean, they're a third world nation. If it wasn't for the oil, they would be a pretty poor nation. And they're not Arabs. They're Persians. They have they have a different outlook and a different culture than the other nations in the Mideast. And so the other thing people don't realize, and this is something that really bothers me, the United States and Britain overthrew a democratically elected government in Iran in 1953. And that eventually led to the Iranian takeover of the U.S. Embassy in November of 79, the next to last year of the Carter administration. In addition, when the Shah was installed in 53, he developed a secret police, the Savak, and who helped train the Savak? Mossad. So the Iranians do not have any love for both the United States and Israel because they imposed the Shah on Iran, and the Shah had a brutal regime for 26 years until he was ousted. And so again, here is another example of how politicians really muck up a country, and why we need to have a universal embrace of human rights, limited government, secure property rights, markets instead of cronyism. And
Murray,
unfortunately,
one of the problems we have, one of the biggest problems with our sort of democracy is there's no consistency. You know, we are electing new leadership every 4 years, six years in the Senate, and you're right. You go back to, I mean, this is even the complaint about the formation of Israel. I mean, it was 75 years ago, but you can make an argument that the Israelis had no business being on that land. But there's a natural statute of limitations to things. I don't know. When it comes to the thing about the Shah of Iran, I don't know if that statute applies there. I don't. But I mean, this is one of the problems. There's no consistency in our government. It changes the yings and yangs on a regular basis.
Well, the consistency, I would argue, is that the government keeps on growing no matter who's in office.
You got a point there. That's true.
Well,
You're right.
If you look at the way I look at things is very simple. From 1913, when we got the income tax amendment, which gave the federal government the authority to tax our incomes directly.
And what was it, 2% the first year, if I'm right?
It was only 2% of the population paid it. The rates went from 1% to 7%, and 98% of the people that paid it. Of course, they loved an income tax because the trade-off would be that the high tariffs were going to decline. Would decline. And that happened for a little bit, but then in the 1920s, Harding got elected, and he was and the Republicans took over, and they were a high tariff people, and so we were stuck with the high tariffs in the 20s and the income tax, which went up to 77%, by the way, the highest rate during World War I. But having said that, it's 1930.
No, hold it. You told me, and I confirmed this, that the highest rate was in 1960s with 92%, right? Hardly anyone paid it, but that was the highest rate. Right?
I think the highest rate occurred during World War II at 94%.
94%. Okay. All right.
Ronald Reagan said he stopped making movies because every extra dollar he paid, he had to pay 94 cents out of every extra dollar he made.
Right.
That's an example of what nearly total slavery.
Well, it's insanity. That's what it is.
I mean, and in England, they had that in the 70s. That's what led to the Thatcher Revolution in 79 when she got elected. The top rate in England was in the 90s. In fact, I remember reading one article saying the maximum tax rate was 103%. In other words, you made $1, you had to pay the government $1.03.
I've heard
That's how crazy it was in England, plus the inflation, the socialism. Every major industry was owned by the state, and Thatcher came in and she privatized the economy, and you had a big boom in the 80s and 90s.
So, Murray, that brings you why I have you on here. You had a letter in the Wall Street Journal that they published regarding our young friends, the new socialists. Why do we keep going through this cycle over and over again? How many times do we have to prove that this doesn't this makes no economic sense? It doesn't work.
Well, they don't learn about this stuff, and they don't read history. They don't know economics. They don't know philosophy. They don't know the law.
You're right, and I'll cut to the choice. They're stupid.
Well, it's not that they're stupid. They're very cagey. They're very cunning. These are the predators in our society who think that they have the power of the state behind them, which can just impose rent control, create government-owned grocery stores in New York City as Mamdani wants. This is crazy stuff. And on the other side of the ledger, you have the Republicans under Trump taking equity stake in corporations. That's the essence of socialism.
Right.
Government ownership of the means of production. Not 100%, but it's creeping socialism. If a Democratic president is elected down the road, and it could happen as early as 2028, the next presidential election, what if a president says, you know what? We need Medicare for all. We got to get rid of the insurance companies, get rid of the middleman, and just have the federal government run the healthcare system. Or let's have the federal government take equity stake in housing companies, housing construction companies, so they can build quote affordable housing. This is why there's no strategic thinking in Washington, because once the Republicans do it and the Democrats get in, they're going to do the same thing on a grander scale than the Republicans. How about food stores? How about agriculture? Maybe we need to collectivize the farms so we don't have any profits in agriculture. This is where what Trump has laid the foundation for in America is a socialized America. And these dummies don't get it, because once you go down this road, you're just going to continue and expand the welfare state.
I'm going to read a line from your letter here where you said the debate has shifted from whether the government should redistribute wealth to how much redistribution is enough. That's exactly what you're talking about here, isn't it?
There's no question about it. I mean, I could see a Democratic president get elected with a Democratic majority in 2028 and in 2029. Not only if the Democrats take over the House, we know that Trump's going to be impeached. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But putting that aside, if the Democrats win the House and the Senate in 2026 this year, they're going to push legislation, and Trump's going to veto it because you need a two-thirds override to get rid of the veto for Trump if the Democrats impose some sort of big government programs, more big government programs. But if they take control in 2028, then it's all bets are off as to what the economy will look like from 2029 going forward. I think we're going to see, if this happens, then we're going to see the biggest expansion of the welfare state in our history. It's going to make the New Deal and the Great Society look like conservative programs.
Right. But I want to get back to what you were saying. You know, I said that the kids are stupid, and you said no, that basically what you're saying is that they're not really stupid. They're in it for the power. Is that what I'm getting?
Well, the politicians are in for the power.
Yeah,
Plus the
right. That's what I mean.
The ideology of the welfare state is just a continuation of what Roosevelt and LBJ did, and what Obama did, and Biden.
Hold on. I have to ask you this, because this is a really important question for me before I forget. What is your feelings about these new Trump accounts for infants?
The idea is something I talked to my students decades ago when I was teaching corporate finance and securities investments. But the government doesn't have any money, but yet the Trump administration is putting $1,000 in each account. I think there are 2-3 million babies born each year. That's $200 million, $300 million. We don't have all that money has to be borrowed. The idea is great. The compounding of money over time will give you a bigger net worth down the road. And I showed my students, if a family put away $1,000 a year and other family members chipped in, and an employer may chip in also, which some employers said they're going to do, and that money just stays there for 65 years, we're talking about multi-millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, I know.
A person's retirement account.
Well, I think just as an example, I think the Trump administration figured out that so your parents, after the $1,000, your parents can add $5,000 a year. Yeah. And if they add $5,000 a year till you're 27, you end up with well more than $750,000 at the end.
It's stunning. It's stunning. This is why Warren Buffett called compound interest one of the great benefits of mankind.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another hypothetical question for you.
Sure.
Would you be kosher with Social Security if it was run the same way? In other words, if it was indexed to the market, so you put a certain amount of money in, or you're forced to every year of your employment, but it was all. I mean, where would it basically go the other direction? Would you be good to that?
First of all, the government has no constitutional authority to create government retirement accounts like Social
I know
Security.
that. I understand that. Right.
Which is not an account. It's just basically a promise based upon your lifetime earnings.
Yeah. But what if it actually was an account? That's basically my question.
Well, there was talk that the government would do that when it was established, but people at that time, back in the 1930s, they said, no, this would be socialism. The government having these accounts, they would have voting power in U.S. corporations. We don't want that. We want to separate government from the economy, just as we want to separate government from church and state. We should separate government from education. In other words, the government has no business in this. The primary responsibility of the federal government is to secure the borders and make sure we're safe and secure. They should have no business in any economic activity except maybe if you want to do local roads or something like that. We have the interstate highway system. The states are responsible for that. Plus, they get federal dollars to help reconstruct the roads over time. But other than that, free people can figure this out, Jim. This is the beauty of free enterprise. Free people know how to invent, innovate, create, and get the goods and services to us. I mean, we have to be amazed at e-commerce, where you can order stuff online, you get it the next day or in 2 days, and it's a seamless process. In the old days, remember, you had to call an 800 number, and it would take maybe a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get a product. Now you can do it overnight. It's just an amazing phenomenon because of technology, the logistics and transportation.
Murray, here's my favorite analogy. Television sets 25 years ago, cathode ray TVs were absolutely enormous. They were just huge, and they cost a fortune. I mean, a big one was in 2000 money, well over $1,000. Now you can buy like a 75-inch TV for $300, and it's 1080p and it's 4K, and the picture's way better.
Well, the same thing with computers. The computing power today is like the cost of computing has gone down, I think, not more than 99% since my first PC in 1984. I mean, I paid $2,000 in 1984. That's comparable to about let's see,
about
at least
10,000 now.
At least that. Can you imagine when you get to 10,000 today? You could probably get almost a supercomputer.
Yeah, I did too. In 1989, I spent $2,000 for a computer, and it had a 10 meg hard drive, which at that time was enormous.
Yeah, I had a 30 meg hard drive. I mean,
oh my God, I'm impressed.
And the printer was a dot matrix printer. It made a lot of noise. It was, and now you can get a whole printer and great printer and a laptop for probably under $2,000.
Easy. I just bought my wife a really nice laptop for $500.
I know it's stunning, and it just shows you technology shows us the way of how to create prosperity that benefits everybody. Virtually everybody today has a cell phone, and even low income people are making low incomes. Have cell phones.
You can get a really decent Android phone for about $135. Company named Blue makes them. They make really cheap Android phones. And they're not the fastest things on the planet, but they work. I've used them. I've seen them. It's like, they're fine.
Well, this is why the politicians, they basically are control freaks. They really think
of course they are.
They know how to organize the economy. And Trump is probably the worst example of this. I mean, all his whole shtick is that he's going to make deals. That's not the job of the president of the United States. Is to make deals. Your job is to apply the Constitution. You took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and he said publicly that the only restraint on power is himself, not the Constitution. I mean, this is an autocratic view of the presidency.
But I think one of the perfect examples of that you just brought up a few minutes ago is these proposed state-run grocery stores in New York City. That's the stupidest idea ever. First of all, how the only way the state can keep the prices low or lower than the free market is literally if they just subsidize it. So at that point, right, they're subsidizing groceries, and
and here's the irony that the bodegas in New York City in each neighborhood are owned by minorities. So he's going to undermine the minority prosperity in New York City with a city-owned grocery store. And the cost of the one building is like $30 million. It's outrageous. And the city is broke also. They don't have enough money. Now they want to impose another tax on real estate above $5 million if you don't live there permanently. I mean, this is highway robbery. These are the people that make the mafia look like choir boys.
Yeah.
And this is what some people have called the government is organized crime. And you see this in the policies that are coming down the pike from the federal government to state governments to local governments. And it has to stop because you're going to have an eventual crisis. And that's why congratulations to what you do. I try to get the word out with my letters in the Wall Street Journal, my podcast, my Mafia USA website, my Substack. I'm trying to do whatever I can in my post-retirement years is to bring some sanity back to public policy, because we need it, because these people are out of control, and it's not. I'm not making a partisan.
I know you aren't. I know.
Point here. I'm making a philosophical, constitutional point.
Murray, I promised you 30 minutes, and we just hit 30 minutes. But I do want to end on this. What specifically would happen if the like you said, we're $40 trillion in debt. At some point, there's something's going to happen that's going to. How exactly would the economy collapse if we get to that point? What exactly would happen?
The scenario that is plausible, whether it happens or not, remains to be seen. That the debt gets so large, that the deficits get so large, foreigners are hesitant to buy our debt. The Federal Reserve steps in and prints literally trillions of dollars over 2-3 years, which is what happened in Germany, by the way, in the early 1920s, which caused the crack up of the German economy. And then the whole thing comes falling apart, where the input costs are so great that the companies go under. There were so many bankruptcies in Germany during this early 1920s. We could see this happening again here, but or they'll put in controls, capital controls, price controls, wage controls, like Nixon did in 71. And of course, that eventually led to the double-digit inflation in 73 and 74. And you could have a spike of unemployment to 20-30%, who knows? And you can get the worst of both worlds. You can get an inflationary depression, which is where prices go crazy and unemployment goes through the roof. And that leads to social unrest, political chaos, and it gets very, very dicey in order to stop this, because you have to stop printing the money. You have to downsize the federal budget.
Right. Well, that's the next question. If and when that happens, how do you stop it? It seems to me you got a vicious circle going on there all the time.
Well, other countries have gone through the ringer. Argentina, Greece, and other countries in modern times that have seen their currencies collapse, and they call it austerity. People have to tighten their belts. They just have to buy the necessities of life and not buy any luxuries. And it becomes difficult. That's why it's important for people to organize their personal affairs so they can weather any storm. And that's why I'm having guests on my podcast to talk about these issues, what to do going forward based upon a possible scenario that will be very, very unsettling economically, financially for.
Okay, what's the name of your podcast again?
Podcast is Health, Wealth, and the Pursuit of Happiness. It's on YouTube and on Rumble and Spotify.
Right. And your website is at mafi.com, right?
No, mafiusa.com. It's mafiusa.com. And my Substack is murraysabrin.substack.com.
And I'm just going to spell your name, Sabrin. Sabrin. Right. You know, I love talking to you. You know that.
I know that. We should do this as often as you'd like, because every week something bad is happening.
Well, yeah, and also congratulations. I mean, we're referencing your letter to the Wall Street Journal here, but you actually had 2 published in 1 month, which was really
in 1 week. In 1 week.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened to anybody ever.
I know it's and I have another one in that I sent last week. I'll see if it's published this week. It was a really good letter about why young people are now very critical of capitalism. And I pointed out what we have today is not pure capitalism. What we have today is cronyism, and that's what they're railing against. And it shouldn't be conflated with really pure free market economics. That's
interesting. Well, we could go on forever, but I promise you half an hour, so I'm going to keep it. So, well, like I said, you've been on the show more than any other person. So going back 6 years. So I appreciate it. You know, I don't have to even tell you, it's like, there's a reason we bring you on.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. It's we got to get the message out, because the clock is ticking. And if people want to see in real time what's happening to the national debt, go to usadebtclock.org, and you can see in real time how the debt is increasing and how the deficit is increasing.
Yeah, that literally runs in real time. You can see the dollars literally tick off. It's absolutely it's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Murray, you take care. We'll see you again soon, and we will.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Jim.
Bye. Thanks to Murray Sabrin there. Can't hear myself. For joining us. Always insightful. I don't necessarily agree with everything Murray says, but the thing is, I mean, he's an educated economist and I'm not. So I let him talk. So, I got this is the Jimcast for July 13th, and I'm going to be referencing that in just a second here. I want to start talking about the Tyler Robinson, Charlie Kirk assassination pretrial hearing that ended last week, and mostly about Candace Owens. But I don't really want to talk about Candace Owens. I'm leading to something here, which is, believe it or not, going to lead into economics. So it's been pointed out now. Don't if you follow Candace Owens, what can I tell you? Don't. She's a sociopath. I mean, she's crazy, but she's smart, crazy like a fox crazy because she's making millions of dollars. But she's been floating the wildest conspiracy theories, and the thing is, she's so insistent about them. And they all, like somebody's pointed out, this trial basically this is a pretrial hearing. This pretrial hearing was to decide whether there was enough evidence to send this to trial. Now, the judge isn't actually issuing a ruling till September, but anybody who saw this, I mean, they all basically already proved that he did it, and it's not even the real trial yet. Every single one of Candace Owens' conspiracy theories was knocked down. She's got 8 million subscribers among various platforms. And the thing I have to admit, I understand why she does it. She's making an enormous amount of money. I mean, she's making at least $1 million a year, probably off her podcast, at least. But why this and a lot of other things that we're going to touch on. I'd like to think, dear viewer, that you're not part of this process or camp here. But the fact that there's an enormous number of people online who basically will do or believe anything you tell them. It's astonishing. But I think that social media basically has proved what humanity's always known, and that there's leaders and followers, and most people are followers, and they think even if they think they're leaders, they're followers. I mean, the crap that Miss Owens has spewed is so intensive in its breadth and depth. It's mind-boggling, and yet people believe it. It's like unbelievable. Now, the reason I'm actually bringing this up is I don't want to talk about Candace Owens. She gets enough attention, and I don't want to bring her anymore. But this is not actually the reason. I brought up the fact she's making over $1 million a year for a podcast. 2 other podcasters are making that sort of money are Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. And of course, they started on broadcast cable, if you want to call it that, both on Fox News, and then ended up Kelly quit to go to NBC, and then they fired her, and Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox News directly. And I'm guessing at Fox News they were each getting paid about $10 million a year. I think it was reported, if I'm right, that at NBC, Megyn Kelly was being paid $20 million a year, and she reportedly got a $50 million severance package when she left, when they let her go. So we're talking about people who are not hurting for money at all, right? But here's the deal. So both of these people went from broadcast cable, or in Megyn Kelly's case, actual broadcast television, to podcasting. And even though they're hugely successful in podcasting, you're basically getting paid per subscriber. There's a whole, I'll get into that in a second. There's a whole bunch of reasons you get paid other than your work or in your ratings in broadcast television. So as podcasters, I figure they're making about $1 million a year, but they look at their bank account and wondering, well, how come I'm making so little? I was getting paid $10 million a year to do this job before. Something must be wrong. We have to increase the subscribers. And if we have to lie and bullshit the subscribers to increase them, let's do that. I think that's what the rationale is. Because both of these people have been flip-flopping on all sorts of weird issues and philosophies and all sorts of stuff. But what they don't understand, I don't think they do, is that there's the Fox News is paying them $10 million a year, not because they're actually worth that much, but in some ways it's what you would call defensive contracting. In other words, they're getting paid that much so no one else will hire them. So they just can't quit and go somewhere else. That's part of the reason. So they get paid the maximum amount we can afford to make certain they stay, and also that one of our competitors doesn't grab them. There's that. It's kind of the same thing in professional sports. It's kind of, you get paid not really because you're worth that per se on the court or at the bat, but by paying you that much, you're not going to go anywhere else. So now you have people in the podcasting sphere who are doing and saying all sorts of really crazy things, and you don't. I mean, I hate to say this because I've been kind of enjoyed this guy's work and been a supporter of his for sometimes, but sometimes I'm starting to think, and other people have kind of mentioned this too, that maybe Tucker Carlson is not that bright, and I hate to say that, but I mean, he made $10 million a year and I didn't, so you say who's the smart one, but Megyn Kelly, she is fiercely intelligent, that woman, and so, but I don't know if she buys this either. I don't know if she gets this stuff about the fact that there's a reason she's making less money now, but I don't know if she knows that. So that's the reason I wanted to bring that up, the economic aspect of that. And speaking of that, look how I'll segue here. It's so cool. JD Vance did an interview last week with the Daily Wire where he said about economics, and if I had had more time with Murray, I would have brought this up with him. Said some really kind of wacky stuff. I'm going to quote a few things he said here. He said Milton Friedman's ideas made more sense in the 1980s because they were being advocated in a country that was still very much rich and powerful in institutional Christianity. Another quote. If you look at modern Britain and the result of Margaret Thatcher's policies, you would say that her policies actually got Britain further away from that ideal and not closer to that ideal. A third quote. I think meritocracy can steal from us a sense of what really, really matters. And then Stephen Moore summed this interview up thusly. He's an economist, by the way. I don't know if you know that. He said, this is anti-free market big government gobbledygook. And it is. I mean, and also I want to throw in, and this is another segue come out of here too, about what J.D. Vance has said about aliens, about extraterrestrials. I mean, he is basically, whether he knows or he's just like I have done, is gathered the evidence and concluded. He says that he's pretty certain the extraterrestrials have been coming to Earth, but he says he does not think they're actually from other planets. He thinks they might be biblical demons. Now, you have seen this guy, J.D. Vance, in that debate with Tim Walz. He absolutely destroyed Walz. I mean, it'd be very difficult to say that J.D. Vance is stupid. You'd have a very, very hard time convincing me or anybody else of that. But some of the stuff he's saying is pretty stupid. So now the question is he saying this because he knows he's going to be running for president and he knows that there's a whole bunch of wacky liberal women who love this stuff? Or is he saying it because he actually means it? And of course, that's the thing in politics all the time, is you never know if people are actually fronting for the crowd or if they're actually sincere. That's the problem. You never know. I mean, Lindsey Graham died this weekend, and God bless his soul. He seemed like a really interesting guy and a fun man, but he constantly contradicted himself. So, I'm bringing this up here. First of all, the thing about the aliens in particular is I don't think you can judge extraterrestrial technology based on something that a bunch of people wrote 2,000 years ago who didn't know very much. Now, I'm sorry if you're of the like that thinks that the Bible is literally the word of God, I must admit I disagree with you. I don't. I do. And so you're talking about people 2,000 years ago who knew very, very little compared to today. And the other thing is, I'm not going to argue with him about the fact that at least some of these beings, non-human intelligence, they're called, might be evil. The more I study this whole phenomena, the more I conclude that in some ways the universe is filled with beings that are basically they got the same problems we do. Some of them are good, some of them are evil, and some of them are neutral. And some of them like to fight, and some of them avoid it. It's the same type of stuff we're dealing with, which is it's really depressing. Really, you think, I mean, supposedly this race on from Zeta Reticuli is 2 million years ahead of us. You'd think in 2 million years you'd learn a few things, and of course they have, and they know how to travel way faster than the speed of light, and we don't. But and the other thing is there's the breadth of all these. I think we're going to end up determining or finding out that the universe and even just the Milky Way galaxy is absolutely teeming with intelligent life. It's not, and people say, "Well, how come we haven't seen it before?" Well, something, we've only had the even ability to censor it, even to sense it in the last 25 years. So that's a good reason. In 1990, could we have figured any of this out? In 1990, literally, we didn't know there were any planets outside of our solar system. That was only 35 years ago. We didn't know that. Now they find about a dozen every day, from what I understand. I think they've cataloged like 4,500 planets outside of our solar system. Exoplanets, they're called, because they're outside. So so I'm not going to tell J.D. Vance he's wrong and that some of them might be evil. That may be true, but whether they're all the devil, I don't know. It just it's I mean, this guy seems extremely intelligent in some of these, and also some of these remarks about economics. The thing is, I can argue with Murray about, and I'll just say this right now. God bless him. I respect him immensely. I think Murray's problem is that he doesn't take human psychology into account. In other words, what he says, like, for example, about Social Security is all right. He's correct. But the thing is, if you're going to leave it up to people to do that on their own without government guidance, about a third of people would completely screw themselves. Because I don't know if you've noticed, and I'm going to bring this full circle here, going back to the Candace Owens thing. There's a lot of the public that's really stupid, and most stupid people don't know they're stupid, and so they just end up screwing things up. And so if you're going to ask 200 million American adults to put money in an index account to save it for 30 years, that's a fantastic idea, but about a third of them won't do it. And amazingly, they will be the people who need the money the most at the end. So, but still, on the other hand, in terms of pure economic principles, I think Murray's right on most of the time. I really do. And some of the stuff that Vance just said here in this interview is really, I mean, this is like Stephen Moore brings up, this is actually socialist stuff. It actually is. So I don't know if he believes it or if he's just a guy who wants to get elected. I have no idea. I don't. Now, here's a segue that's called a non sequitur. So there's a gay cruise that leaves Miami. I think it left Miami and went to Turkey and Egypt. Gay cruise went to Turkey and Egypt, refused entry both places. Now, and I wasn't able to clip this because I couldn't find it. But if I'm right, I read this morning that it went from Turkey, went back to Egypt and tried again. No. Now, why? Because homosexuality is illegal in these places. If you're going to go on a gay cruise to the Middle East, you'd think that somebody would have looked into that, wouldn't you? I mean, you got a lot of people on board. You got a lot of money on the line. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's having a good time on board the ship, but it never occurred to anybody to check whether they would be able to leave. And so then you're telling, you're going to say, well, Jim, people aren't that stupid. These are people running a big, huge operation. I mean, I have no idea how much the money. I'm sure there's probably on the fares alone for this cruise probably was well over $1 million. That's my guess. If you take 2,000 people times 2,000, that's actually $4 million. So, yeah, it's like they didn't check. They did not check. And it gets back to this whole thing. And I'm laughing because I still find this funny. The whole Queers for Palestine thing. So you know what happens if you're queer in Palestine? They throw you off a building. That's what happens. And these people, they basically, and some writer brought this up. This is really true. If they probably got lucky, because if they had been actually let off the boat in some of these places, some of these people might have been seriously hurt by the government. I mean, physically hurt. And yeah, that's true. But they didn't bother to check. Unfreaking believable. All right. A guy at the Vatican, his name is Mario Biglio. Biglino. Bellinio. I figured it out. I know my Italian a little bit. He's a translator at the Vatican, an official translator on staff. He got fired for suggesting that a word in the Bible, in the original Hebrew text, it shows up over 2,500 times. The word is Elohim, Elohim. They've been arguing for years of whether that's both the plural and singular verse used at the use of that word. And I don't know enough about Hebrew to tell. I can't tell you. But his contention is that it's pretty obvious when it's the singular and when it's the plural. And in most instances in the Bible, it's listed in the plural version. In other words, it means God's, plural. And he thinks in those instances, they were actually talking about extraterrestrial beings. And he got fired for this. Now, I can't tell you whether this is worthy or not. I don't know anything about Hebrew, nothing. But, I mean, it seems to me he might have a point, I don't know if it's true or not. Nobody would. And, he brings up, he brought up the example of Ezekiel. I can say it. There. Okay. That book of the Bible, which that even some religious scholars have suggested is actually describing the landing of a flying saucer. That's not even a stretch, but he's talking about other places in the Bible too, where it seems like they're talking about multiple gods. And, well, I don't know. You be the judge or I be the judge or something. I'm not judging. I don't know enough about Hebrew to draw a conclusion there. Just today, or yesterday, I guess, or this weekend, the FCC, and I do not know why the FCC has jurisdiction on this, they approved the launching of a satellite that will be able to, with a giant mirror, that will be able to turn parts of darkness on Earth into daylight. The way it works is that it's far enough above the planet, so it takes the light of the sun and then bounces it back down to Earth on an area that's in the dark portion of Earth during that time, which is 12 hours a day because the Earth goes around, right? Duh. Okay. So, but and it would be able to eliminate a circle about 3 miles wide. It would be able to do that. So, in that 3 mile area, basically, it would turn into daylight. It would be day. I don't know. I don't think the sky would turn blue. I don't think that would happen. But it would basically be day, and that's creepy. And people have brought up all sorts of stuff. It's like people won't be used to it. You'll have car accidents. But they bring up the thing about the fact of all the things that could be helped from this. Now, this one company, they're going to launch the satellite. It's going to be basically a demonstration test, but their plan is to launch 50,000 of them. So basically, you can contract for this. You can say, I want the satellite aimed at this spot at this time, and it will do that. And I have no idea. They did not mention how much it would cost to do this, but the idea is it would be available commercially. So if you needed your farmer's field lit up for like a half an hour in the middle of the night, it would do that. But still, it's weird. It's really, really weird. And I got two finalies here. You know about Uri Geller, the supposed psychic, and I've never known what to make of this guy, because he was basically debunked on TV in real time during a Johnny Carson Tonight Show episode in the 70s, if I'm right, where Carson, who was a former magician, that's very important here, he thought Geller was a fraud, so he made certain that Geller's like plants in the audience and that none of those people got in, and then Geller failed on camera. So but on the other hand, there have been some very credible people who said that he has gone to scientific laboratories and been put under scientific conditions, and he's passed tests for certain cognitive abilities. Now, the theory is that there's two Uri Gellers. One is that he really has some telepathic or some psychic abilities, but he's developed this magic show just to make money, and that's what that was, a magic show. That's the theory. Anyway, Geller says that in the England-Norway quarterfinal match in the World Cup, that now I didn't see this, and I tried to find a video of it, but I couldn't. That the winning goal by England, apparently just before the goal, I saw the goal, but they didn't play this part, is somebody kicked the ball straight up into the air, and it appears that it bounced off what people said, it bounced off some drone wire that was stretched across the top of the field, and came down basically suddenly and at a weird angle. But the sensors in the ball, and yeah, they do put sensors in the soccer balls now, and all the sensors in the stadium said that didn't happen. But apparently this ball went straight up, some guy kicked it straight up in the air, and it came down in an unusual fashion, which did not seem to make any sense, and that set this goal up. And Uri Geller said he did that. That's what he's claiming. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, okay, so you've got some psychic abilities, but you need a way to make a living. Geller's been really good at keeping himself in the news. I think he's 78 or something like that. I mean, he's not a young guy. And but like I said, I mean, I've read, I mean, even like Hal Puthoff and a lot of these guys have said he's been tested under rigorous conditions and he's passed. So I have no idea what to think. None. Leave that up to you. And finally, in Moscow, a woman bit off her husband's penis because he was having an affair, and apparently she actually sharpened her teeth before she did it. So be that a warning to you. I don't know. Who am I kidding? I know who watches this show. It's all men. Oh God. I want to thank Murray Sabrin again for joining us today. That was really cool. Now, you have to understand, for the summer, at least for the summer, we're only doing shows on Mondays and Thursdays. That's it. So it might go longer than that, but that's what it is at the time being, at least through Labor Day. So our next show is going to be Thursday, and our guest is going to be Jonathan Lockwood, military historian. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in Iran, and I do my little dog and pony show Jimcast here at the end, and hopefully you go to sleep or whatever you're doing. I don't know when you're watching this. I mean, I'm not fooling anybody else either. Hardly anybody watches it live. I know that. So, but we still do it live at 9 p.m. Eastern, Mondays and Thursdays. And please like and subscribe. I have to bring that up. I do. I just have to, because like it's I'm not getting paid the $1 million for doing my podcast that Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson are. I'm not getting paid that money. So, and I tell you what, if I ever get when I get $1 million, I'll stop saying that. Okay. All right. Yeah. Like and subscribe, and we will see you with Jonathan Lockwood on Thursday. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are. And good night to you, wherever you may be. We'll see you Thursday, everybody. Take care.